And really, that job paid absolutely nothing. But my whole intention was get me to the events. If I'm there, I'll end up where I want to be. And obviously, that was at Fox. So it took a while, but we landed here. It's like you look around a room and you've got four of the best mountain bikers in the world, some of the best like product designers in the world, and I'm just like, what am I doing in here? Like, what's my role? Kenny Roxon is a massive fan. Like, when I go to the World Cups, I'm always sending him like video clips trackside, and he's like, dude, I think I could ride that. Like, so like he talks about it now. He's like, post racing career, he's like, I want to try and do a World Cup. I'm just like, okay, dude, like that's pretty gnarly. It's a little different than the trails we ride here in Laguna, but hey, if anybody can do it, it would be him. So
Austin Hoover, welcome to the Downtime podcast, man. How's your day so far?
Awesome, man. Thanks for having me, Chris. All good. Just sunny in California. It's I'm not sure when this is going to go live, but I saw it started raining in Andorra, so we've got better weather here.
Yes, the weather in Andorra looks horrific. It's going to be interesting because that track, I'm sure, is not really used to getting that kind of rain. It looked like it was getting pretty eroded and beaten up from the storm, so I'm excited to see how practice pans out.
Yeah, it will be interesting. I feel a little bad because I actually sent a voice note to Tony Seagrave this morning, just like checking in on something, and everything I had seen last night before I went to sleep was like sunny, beautiful, and I was like, oh, it looks amazing weather there in Andorra. Hopefully it sticks around. And then by the time I think he had received the message, he's sending me videos of rain in the pit, and I'm just like, oh shit.
It's gonna get wild for sure, but that's all good. You can't beat a good mud race. All right, man. Right. Well, let's get a bit of background on you, because I think like Moto was a big thing for you growing up. You grew up in Florida, is that right?
I did. Yeah. I grew up in Florida, grew up racing moto. My dad raced, so it was kind of a family thing. He raced on a pro level, and then my brother and I both got into it at an early age. I was 5, and grew up racing moto, and always kind of like bikes were always an important part of our life. Like, especially BMX, like when you can't ride your moto, you just go and build jumps in the woods with your buddies for your BMX bikes. And I would say like by trade was a moto kid. Like that's what I was focused on. But kind of was always obsessed with anything with 2 wheels and jumping, really. It's like, what can I get air on?
Yeah. How serious was your dad about it then? You said he raced at a pro level, right? Was he pretty good?
Yeah, he was pretty good. He has a funny nickname. We call him Hollywood Hoove. And so it kind of stems from his racing career. So he was like one of those guys that, he was a decent level. I don't honestly really know because there's not a ton of trophies in our house. So I'm like, what's the real story here? But from all the stories we've heard, like he was that guy that had like the dialed bike and like the sick gear, and like, so everybody called him Hollywood. So that was like always his thing. So I don't think results were really his thing. It was more of an image thing, but it's the sport that we kind of grew up in, and it's where he came from. So it was really cool that, honestly, now that I think back on it, that my brother and I took to it like we did. Like it created this whole family activity for us, and we traveled all around the country racing, and eventually led myself here to Fox, and my brother actually works full time for us as well. He's a videographer, so I think it was like my dad's dream, that both of his boys ended up working at Fox, which is pretty cool. And the fact that we work super closely together, obviously, because of, the nature of my job. And it's pretty cool. Kind of stayed a family thing the whole time.
That's super cool. Did your dad have connections to Fox from the racing side of things? Like, was he familiar with them there?
Yeah. So he was really good friends with a guy named Mark Barnett, who was like a champion motocrosser in the 80s. And that was kind of, from what I understand, that was kind of my dad's connection to the Fox brand, and knew the family, Jeff Fox, the founder. And that was kind of our original connection. And I make the joke. So I was part of the amateur program, with race support, and I think we started getting hooked up, we're just getting free gear, but I think I was like 10 years old. So my joke here is like, they started giving me free shit when I was 10 years old, and I just kind of never went away.
That's awesome, though. That must have been super exciting as a 10-year-old to be getting like free Fox kit.
Oh yeah, it was insane. Like, and like with your name and your number on the back of your jersey, and like just feel like, and at the time, like, we were looking up to Ricky Carmichael and, all the legends that, they were obviously all on Fox. And, eventually both Ricky Carmichael and James Stewart are from Florida too. So like the sort of moto culture happening in that area was really cool. And unfortunately there's no mountains there, so there's not a lot of mountain biking going on, but tons of moto riding. So yeah, it was a good foundation for me.
Yeah. How far did the racing side of things go for you then? Like, could you see a future in it at some point, or?
Yeah, it's a great transition. You're a really good host. So I raced pretty seriously up until I was, 18, 19, kind of getting into like where you need to start making decisions, like what life direction you're going to take. And, like I said, the community in Florida was super strong, and a lot of my friends and competitors were starting to get rides, right? Like, oh, Davey Millsap signed a Suzuki contract, Kyle Chisholm got a Kawasaki contract, and I'm like, this isn't really going to happen for me anytime soon. And so, yeah, I made the decision to go to school, and of course, I kept riding and racing just for fun. But when I graduated from high school at 18, I went straight into college, and with like a marketing and communications focus, and but always with the intention, like, to work in the industry per se. And so, yeah, I'm glad that I realized that as early as I did, because I think, and no offense to those like chasing the privateer dream, but I think I would have done that for a long time, because a bunch of my friends did. And then you're 27 and like, what do I do now? You know what I mean? So it was cool for me to be able to go to school and get educated while kind of using my industry connections and just participation in the sport too, to kind of remain in the space that I wanted to be in the whole time. So yeah, in hindsight was a good decision, because my racing career was not looking bright.
Fair play. And alongside this, am I right in thinking that your dad used to work at Disneyland?
He did. Yeah, he did. I mean, a lot of people, I think, in Florida, it's like, one of the main industries there. Like, I can't even imagine how many total employees they have. But yeah, my pops worked for Disney, and which was funny. Like, we took it for granted as kids. Like, we would go there for dinner, and ride one ride and come home. We're like 12 years old, So yeah, that's what kept us in Florida. And which was funny, because then the whole moto industry, like a bunch of athletes ended up moving there later down the road. They figured out it was, a year-round place that you could ride, good weather, good conditions for training with humidity and heat. Like, if you can do 30-minute motos in the Florida sand and heat, like you can dominate anywhere. And Ricky Carmichael kind of like set that standard. But now, like, every moto athlete that I work with either has a partial home in Florida, or they're there full time. Like a majority of them either bounce back and forth between Florida and California, or live in Florida full time. So it's kind of crazy. The industry ended up kind of like coming to us, and my parents and my brother still live there. So it's cool. Like, I get to go back quite a bit for work stuff, and then get to see the family too at the same time. So yeah,
that's
a hotbed,
man. Yeah, and that link into Disneyland ended up with you working there for a little bit before you found your way into kind of Fox and the motor industry, right? What were you up to at Disneyland?
That was kind of during that transition that I talked about. Actually, that was like when I was kind of finishing college, and I had a couple buddies that were working at. There was a stunt show at the MGM Studios, or I can't remember, they call it like Hollywood Studios or something like that now, but. And the show is no longer, unfortunately, but it was super cool. It was like cars, and it was actually based on a show that originated in Disney France. So it was a French production originally, and then they kind of converted it over to the Florida park, and it was like. Basically, I don't know if you've ever seen like the Indiana Jones show at Disney, but it's like an action like stunt show, and then they stop and they show. It's like kind of to show the viewers like a behind the scenes look. So it was like supermoto bikes and cars and drifting and fire and all kinds of crazy
Nice.
shit. So I had a couple buddies, like I said, that got in somehow, and it was like super good money. Like it paid really well. It was like SAG, like the Actors Guild.
Okay.
So you had like all the SAG like standards for like high level production. So like you get paid like for 8 hours if you were only there for 2 or whatever. It was all kinds of, anyway, it was a sick deal. And so long story short, they were really struggling to find people that could ride the motorcycles. The cars they had pretty like under control. They had a lot of people, so what they started doing was like reaching out to the local like moto community and it was street, they had slick tires and they were like supermoto bikes basically. But what they said was like they were trying to find motocross riders because the guys who could do the street riding couldn't jump. But the guys who could jump, they could teach how to do all the street stuff, like the burnouts. And like, I had never done that before. If I burned a tire out, my dad would skin me alive because that's the $90 tire. But yeah, it was funny. I ended up getting in that, and unfortunately, I got hurt like really early on in being a part of the show. I had a partially torn ACL, and then I had a crash on the bike at the show. And just fully torqued my ACL, like just had to do a full reconstruction. But that was honestly kind of one of the moments where I was like, okay, like I need to like figure my shit out. So, that was kind of, once I got hurt, then, I took a gig. Actually, I have a sticker on my water bottle at a place called Mama Sauce. It was a print shop in Orlando, and a friend of a friend ran it, and I was down and out, hurt, and hadn't really found a job, and he was just like a marketing genius, and I was like, man, I need to do something. Like I need to get out, like start, using. I can't remember if I had finished my degree or not, but anyway, I was busted. I would like show up at the print shop every day on my crutches, and I started helping out with like social media and just like some basic marketing stuff around the shop, and it was super cool. It was like the first time I'd ever truly worked with like creatives. Like they had a design team, and they did a bunch of, it was really rad. I'll send you the link, but they do like high end like letterpress printing and screen printing, and but yeah, I just like spent my ACL recovery there basically learning. And then at the very end of that is when my wife and I, who would become my wife, we moved to California, which eventually led me to Fox. It's a little bit of a longer story, but anyway, that's kind of my part of the story, at least. I don't know how deep you want to go.
No, that's all good. So you were in California before you joined Fox, right?
I was, yeah. So my wife actually got an opportunity to come out here. She was doing some speech pathology stuff, and her best friend got her a gig in Hollywood as like an internship. So while I was doing the print shop thing, she was living out here at her friend's house, like doing an internship. And at the end of it, I came out to visit her, and then we were going to road trip back to Florida. And that last week she was working there, they offered her a job. And they were like, hey, do you want to just work here full time and move to California? And I was like, hell yeah, of course. Let's go. Yeah. Let's get out of Florida. I probably would have left Florida 5 years earlier if I hadn't have met her. But like we met, and yeah, I ended up staying there longer. But so then we moved out together. We were living in LA. She was working at the speech office. And then honestly, it's funny now I look back on it, like the first 6 months of us living in California, I did absolutely nothing. Like I was just riding, like kind of working, like just she was working. I was probably being a really bad partner at the time. But yeah, it was 2 years total from when we moved to California to when I started at Fox. So I just did some random stuff. I worked at a creative agency in LA, which was also super cool. Got like tons of experience doing that, and was helping out with some Red Bull event work through friends that worked there, and then I also did marketing for a privateer supercross motocross race team, which was another like crazy experience. We could probably do a whole podcast on that alone. But long story short, I had a friend who was an old family friend who was managing this race team, and they landed a really big sponsor, CycleTrader.com at the time. And I remember she called me and was like, hey, we got this big sponsor and they want to do all this marketing stuff. And like, she was trying to run a race team. And she was like, can you help me? Like, I know you're good at this type of stuff. And I was like, well, yeah, kind of, I don't know. So I just got thrown in as like the sponsorship coordinator for this, corporate, company. And I had a weekly call with these people in Virginia at CycleTrader. And it was awesome. Honestly, it was so cool because it was just like, it was super entrepreneurial, and it was like, we kind of got to make it our own. And I got to make it my own with my role because I worked on that side. But what I really wanted to do the whole time was work with athletes. So once I got in at the race team, I'm like making sure the guys have all their product and like coordinating the photo shoots. And, I got to go to some races, and really that job paid absolutely nothing. But my whole intention was get me to the events. If I'm there, I'll end up where I want to be. And obviously that was at Fox. So it took a while, but we landed here.
Yeah, definitely. So was your first role within Fox, was that within motocross teams? It was, wasn't it, I think? It
was, yeah. So I started here in August of 2015, and I was the pro athlete manager on the moto side. Okay. So just got thrown right in, taking care of Ryan Dungey, Chad Reed, Ken Roxon. We were right in the... Yeah, it was crazy. I'll never forget, like my first day here, who was my boss at the time, maybe the first week, but we were talking to the Pro Circuit 250 team, which we hadn't signed yet. And I was just like, oh my God, like we're going to do this. We're going to have a 250 team. Like I'm going to work with all these riders. And we ended up signing that team. We still work with them to this day. So that's really cool. And so yeah, that was my original gig here, which I did for about 2 years. Which was
how did that
amazing.
How did that route into Fox come about then? Was that through being on the circuit at the races with this privateer team?
No, I was already really connected with the brand. Like I had a lot of, from my time with the amateur program, and there was a couple people that worked here at the time who I was friends with. And actually Mikey Rangel, who runs global marketing for us, was at Fox originally. And we met through just, I would come to Fox events, like once I lived here. So we had kind of gotten to become buddies, and then, which, I mean, now we're really, really close friends, which is awesome. Like, and we work super closely together. But he was actually doing the Moto athlete manager role before I got hired. So he did the job before I did. He actually left and went and worked for Stance for a couple years. So then that kind of opened it up for me. And then, that was my way in. But yeah, it was, I would say being at the races definitely helped, and being out in California definitely helped. But it was those original connections, I would say, with the brand that kind of opened the door for me. And I just kept pushing so hard. Like I probably annoyed the shit out of them now that I think about it. But this is where I wanted to be. I knew that. I've always been so passionate about this brand, and I'm just such a believer in the foundation that the family established in 74. And it's just exactly where I wanted to be. So, and it opened up, and because like I said, I was always just obsessed with two wheels. Which is, I think, why, the fact that, like I said, I originally was brought on the moto side, but like, I kind of always knew I'd end up on like crossing over to the mountain bike world as well. I didn't know that I would be able to work on both, which is insane. But yeah, it was a cool route in for sure.
Yeah. So how does mountain bike start to creep into your life then? Because like you said, growing up, it was moto and BMX by the sounds of things. So like a real drive for anything two wheels, but not a huge amount of riding where you were.
No.
When did you start to kind of get swayed by mountain biking and start to swing a leg over them?
Yeah, so like I said, I always had that interest in bikes and primarily BMX, and I always just like followed BMX. Like especially, I was really into like building trails and the scene. Like in being in Florida, like if you're a BMXer, it's like, oh, I'm gonna go to Pennsylvania for the summer and ride the trails up there. I remember guys at the skate park would talk about that, and I was a little kid, but I was always be like, oh, that's like the dream. That's so cool. Watching like the old like Brian Foster videos and like all that stuff. Like I just idolized those guys. So yeah, foundationally was always interested in bikes. And then really, I think on the mountain bike side, the serious, I think, like when I really started to realize it was during my time at our office in Barcelona. So I worked at Fox Europe for 2.5 years. And I sat next to Vincent Sacomani, who was our sports marketing guy at the time for bike, and he has like skateboard roots, and so do I, and so like we shared a lot of similar interests. So he would just start showing me stuff. Like he'd show me videos, or like he'd get like the Hurly Burly books, and like stuff would start showing up at the office, and I had absolutely no responsibility whatsoever on the bike side. And then we'd have sales meetings, and we have Loic would come and Tahnée would come, and I started to meet the athletes, and yeah, it was kind of just like I just really was like, holy shit, like there's something really cool going on here, and I think digging in like a little deeper than just like surface level, like fan, I would say.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was kind of what opened my mind up to it, and then started riding a little bit more when I was over there. But it's funny too, because now I look back and like in 2016 for my bachelor party, like we went to Keystone Mountain and like just rode the bike park on rental bikes for 3 days. Like me and all my buddies, like we had no idea, like we didn't know about bikes. Nobody owned bikes, but it's like the interest was always there,
Yeah.
But yeah, over in Europe, I started riding a bit. Like we had a sales meeting at Leogang and like did a couple of days in the bike park there. And the World Cup was that weekend, and that really kind of like got me exposed to that, the whole community. And but again, it's like I wasn't like shouting from the top of the mountain like, hey, put me on the mountain bike category. that kind of just happened naturally a couple years later. But yeah, that was kind of when I really started paying attention, watching the World Cups, and like, yeah, it was. And now I'm just like so in it. It's crazy. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So when did you find out then that you're going to be moving into a role that involved both moto and mountain bike?
Like I said, it was a couple years later. So at the end of 2019, I moved back to the States, and just obviously nobody knew, but right before the pandemic. So it was like November of 19, came back, and then like before you know it, the pandemic hit, and then like the whole world changed, right? Like, and we had our new CEO, Jeff McGuane, who's now our president of the Action Sports Group. Awesome dude. During COVID, our team got really small all of a sudden, and we started working really closely together. And at the time, I was in like a brand marketing role for Moto, and we started working really closely together. And I think he saw my skill set of working with teams and partners and athletes, and so yeah, he offered me it was August of 2020 that he offered me the role that I'm in now. And I'll never forget, he called me and he was like, hey, I've got an idea. And like, he's the type of guy that like, when he's got an idea, you're like, okay, like when he says that, you're like full focus, because he's such a smart dude and has so much experience across our entire industry. So it really piqued my interest, and I was like, okay, what's he got for me, And then he's like, yeah, we want you to run sports marketing across both categories. And I was like, mountain bike too? And he's like, yeah, I said both categories.
That's pretty unusual, right?
It is. It's a role that we never had here. I think it's something, pretty unique, but at the same time, for a brand that's so ingrained in both sports, I would say, like, quite honestly, it's really cool, because a lot of my job, like I try and connect the two programs, like, or if something's working really well on the moto side, try it on the bike side, and vice versa. So for us, it's really opened up, I think, just a different way of thinking and a different way of doing things for both sides. That's really kind of, we found a lot of efficiencies and just a lot of things that work well, on both sides of the sports. But what I really like is the mutual admiration that exists between the world, especially I think the World Cup racers are super tuned into moto.
For sure.
And now I think the moto guys are starting to catch on. I think the mountain bikers are a little bit more fan of moto versus going the other way. Yeah. But then you've got there's a lot of moto guys that are really tuned in now, which is super cool. Like Kenny Roxon is a massive fan. Like when I go to the World Cups, I'm always sending him video clips trackside, and he's like, dude, I think I could ride that. So he talks about it now. He's like, post racing career, he's like, I want to try and do a World Cup. I'm just like, okay, dude, that's pretty gnarly. It's a little different than the trails we ride here in Laguna, but hey, if anybody can do it, it would be him. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Do you think it's e-bikes that are helping that sort of turning Supercross, motocross guys' heads towards the mountain bikes? Probably. Honestly, I don't think it really has anything to do with the motors or the e-bikes. I think for the industry, for sure, because you've got for example, all the mechanics at the factory Kawasaki team, they're all so gnarly into e-bikes. They're riding from the shop. They've all got the most, because they're factory Kawasaki mechanics. They're the baddest dudes when it comes to working on bikes. So they've got the most tricked out setups with all the parts. And Adam Cincerillo's mechanic, Justin Shanty, he just went and spent a week at Crankworks because he's just just wants to ride. It's super cool. So I'm seeing a lot of it, and honestly, I'm trying to push it because I think both sports can leverage each other. Something pretty cool is we've got a pretty cool thing in the can that's going to happen this weekend in Val Nord with Jackson Goldstone and one of our moto athletes, Joe Shimoda. So I won't spill the beans, but pay attention.
Okay. Well, it will have happened by the time this goes out, so.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. So basically, quick story. The biggest amateur motocross event in the U.S. It's the national championships, just happened a couple weeks ago, and we pulled Joe in we do a special kit every year for all of our athletes that qualify. So we pulled Joe in. It was a really fun thing we did. We pulled him in and kind of let him design the kit. Really pick the colors and kind of help. He's more the creative director. He wasn't pushing any pixels by any means, but anyway, so we built the whole activation kind of around Joe and kind of being that echelon athlete working with our amateur kids, and it was a really cool tie-in that we did. But anyway, Jackson loved the kit. He was like, dude, the Joe Shimoda Loretta's kit is so rad. Can I get one? And I'm like, sure, dude. Yeah. You should ride in it. And he's like, oh yeah. Maybe I'll do a lap of practice in Andorra and get Sven to get some photos, and I'll make a post, and maybe me and Joe can do a collab post. So nice. we did it full moto style too. The guys at the Syndicate were super cool, and obviously because all their kit is custom and there's branding guidelines and whatnot, but they gave us a little exception. So we did it full moto style. So it's got his number on the back and a butt patch. Yes. And so yeah, it should be pretty cool. Should be pretty rad.
So that's very cool, man. Very cool. So your job title is Global Director for Sports Marketing and Athlete Development. Can you explain?
Long title. I think we need to shorten that thing.
What does that mean?
Yeah. So I mean, basically oversee the program globally, across both categories, like I mentioned earlier, and then the athlete development side is more responsibilities with the amateur program, working through especially that's a crazy comparison actually between moto and bike. How I would say there's just a little bit more of a formal process of how you develop as a rider on the moto side with a not clear, but a pretty clear pathway into being a pro. Whereas I think on the bike side, that's something that we could definitely improve upon as an industry. But yeah, that's been something super cool for me on the youth talent development side, like, because those are my roots. Like, that's where I came from. I was part of that program, and there's a lot of things that, you know, I would say that are kind of like traditions even that we've kept throughout the program for, you know, since I was a part of it. So that's a pretty fun side of things. It gets kind of wild when, like, because you deal with parents, right? So like, but we're super lucky, honestly. Like our team, we've got on the moto and the bike side, when it comes to amateur athletes, like, we're super lucky to work with all the riders that we do, and great families. And just what's super cool is that, like, they're really part of the brand. And we really try hard to make sure that they're pulled in, to make sure that they know what's going on, to make sure even that they know about stuff before it happens, so we can get their opinion. And so that's been something, like, super rewarding for us. Like, when you have a round table conversation with some athletes and parents to kind of like tee up the future is, man, there's not many things more rewarding than that in our world. So yeah, it's awesome. a super fun part of my job for sure.
Yeah. And I 100% agree. It'd be good to see more consistency and more pathway kind of stuff being done in mountain biking, especially on the downhill side. So work to be done. I think everyone acknowledges that, but no one really knows what the solution is just yet, but I'm sure we'll get there together.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of it is, you know, you have some pretty good national programs, right? Like, I think, like, France, for example, like, look at what's happening in France. It's unbelievable. And you see the result of it, right? The talent that's coming out of there. So I think, like, using them as a benchmark for the other national series. And, you know, I would obviously, being an American, would love to see, you know, that development pathway to, you know, start to be built over here, which, from what I understand, there's some pretty cool things in the works. And our buddy Nico Mullally, for example, like, what he's doing in the Southeast is just so awesome. And and again, we're seeing it, right? Because now you've got talent like Asa, for example. I mean, he should be the next American, you know, contender on the World Cup scene, and and hopefully there's a good platform to get him there. So it sounds like exciting times.
Definitely, man. Definitely.
Yeah, man.
Tricky stuff, but we'll get there. So one of the biggest, like, moves since you've been in that role, I guess, is getting the entire Santa Cruz Syndicate onto Fox, because they were all on, each three of the three riders at the time had three different kit sponsors, which causes its own headaches, I think, for the team, and all sorts of, you know, trying to make that look like a group is always a challenge. So that move on to Fox across the board is obviously super cool. Can you just tell us a bit about that, how that came to be? Because I'm guessing moving three athletes and bringing in a fourth athlete in as well, getting everyone on the same program is not a straightforward piece of work.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I mean, yeah, it's a long story. I'll try and tell the short version. But yeah, first and foremost, like, it's been such a cool partnership that we've been able to strike with Santa Cruz and the Syndicate. Not being, you know, the super in the mix person, especially, like, I didn't know anybody at Santa Cruz, for example, before we got this going. So we had a super long-standing partnership with Specialized, which was awesome. All the respect in the world to them. We won a lot together. We did a lot with, like, Bruni, for example, and Vincent Sacomani, who I mentioned earlier. You know, he deserves a lot of the credit for that, because he did just a fantastic job with building that partnership and bringing Loic especially in as a face of the Fox brand. So we're super, super thankful for everything that we were able to do with them. And we did end up going different directions, which, again, you know, no hard feelings. We kind of knew it was the plan for them. They wanted to start developing their own apparel, and which, you know, no disrespect whatsoever. And, you know, we're still all cool. I always, you know, go and see Laurent and them at the races. Those guys are awesome, and still keep in really good contact, especially with Loic. But we basically got to a point where we were like, all right, what's our next move? You know, and we explored some options. there was a lot going on at the time, and then all of a sudden, I remember. So Vincent was still around at the time, and I got a call from Vince, and I want to say he was at. It started really to kick off around Maribor, so this was 2021, and I want to say it was either Maribor or Lenzerheide. I can't remember exactly, but basically he was like, "Hey, this could happen, like this syndicate," and I was like, "What? Like, really? That's pretty insane." So fast forward to Snowshoe World Cup, I traveled out. I went to Leger that year, and then Snowshoe was not too long after. And I remember I traveled out to Snowshoe because we had set up some meetings. Like me and Vince were going to meet with Greg, and then plan was to meet with some of the guys from Santa Cruz. So yeah, we met with Greg. I think I had been in Snowshoe for like maybe 30 minutes. And like, I always joke about like how it's easier for me to get to Europe from California than it is to get to Snowshoe. So it was just like this hellacious travel day. I show up, like, I don't know if you've ever been there before, but it's a mission to get there. Yeah. And yes, I show up and Vince is like, "Hey, we're going to meet with Greg." And I'm like, "Okay, like when?" And he's like, "Oh, right now." And I'm like, "Oh shit, okay." So we go meet with Greg in the village, and having never really like formally met him, for me, I was just like, right away, I could just like sense there was something there. We just had a super cool conversation. He was really straightforward about kind of like what his expectations were, and kind of, I would say, he was a little bit of like an orchestrator of the whole thing, because I think he was pretty excited about an opportunity to work with us. And so yeah, then later in that weekend, I found myself in our condo in the living room, and I'm sitting on the couch, and Rob Roskop, Steve Pete, Greg Minar, and Scott Turner from Santa Cruz are sitting in the room across from me, and I'm just like, all right, like this is pretty cool. So yeah, long story short, everybody was super enthusiastic, and they were looking for a change. Obviously, there was some plans on their side to sort of rebrand the syndicate, and bringing Jackie on board obviously was a huge part of that. And then we were super stoked. Obviously, we had a long-standing relationship with Lori, so the fact that Lori was included in it, we were just kind of like, is there like a bad thing about this, or is this, and then, so yeah, a couple weeks after that, like me and Will got on the phone and, kind of finished everything up. And then, yeah, it was super smooth. And then, yeah, we started working together, and quickly just realized culturally how many similarities there are between our brands, and just honestly people internally. So yeah, like just the working relationship right off the bat was really smooth. We had a ton of excitement behind it. Our design team, for example, are all like, we've got some super good riders sitting on the other side of the building right here, and who are super in tune with the World Cups and all that. So to have a new project to work on, and there was just so many ideas just being kicked around right away. So started off really smooth, and just honestly has been like 10 out of 10 as far as partnerships go. Like, we're so aligned with everything that we want to do together, and yeah, man, it's exciting. And I think I'm pretty biased, but I think it looks pretty cool.
It does look very cool, man. But a huge project, right from the get-go, because not only did you do kits for the athletes, you basically did like everything for all of the staff on the team. So there's like jackets and hoodies and t-shirts, and I think there was dungarees at one of the races. Like, you've not messed about. I don't think I've seen it done at that scale before, to memory anyway, in mountain biking, like across the board. Like, that was a huge undertaking to get going with.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that, first and foremost, because it was a huge project. Tons of time and energy was just poured into it. But like I said, the enthusiasm internally here that we had to make it special and put that amount of effort into it was really what I think got us to where we're at. So I'm super thankful for our whole team here, and for all the crew over at Santa Cruz too. Like I said, it's an easy working relationship. They trust us to do our thing. Like, I don't know how many times I've been on phone calls with Seb Kemp, and he's just like, "Nah, you guys know it's cool. Like, on the gear side, we're not going to try and tell you how to design stuff, which is awesome. And we just really appreciate that partnership. And it was the rollout initially was really exciting because kind of what I was talking about earlier on the how we bring things from the moto side over to bike. That was really one of the first instances of that where we got to put that into action, because it was like, okay, top to bottom, this has to be perfect, from the rider kits to the staff clothing to all the branding, everything. So coming with like a full approach with the we call it team wear, pit wear, basically anything that the staff is wearing off the bike. The way that all executed was super fun. And like showing up at Lord's last year with the dungaree, it was like boiler suits, Yeah. So, and of course, first round, everybody, like the entire crew did track walk in the boiler suits, athletes, mechanics, everybody. So that definitely made some noise, like right off the bat, which was super cool. And we've just, now it's like, we just want to keep clicking gears and like keep that momentum alive. So, it's been so fun. And then what was really cool, so I'll be totally honest, the first year was a bit of a scramble.
Okay.
It came, the deal came together a little bit late. We weren't quite sure like what for example, like branding guidelines for the gear was going to be and all that. So to be quite honest, we weren't able to put as much design energy into it in year one as we probably would have liked to. And I think that's why this year you'll notice when it comes to the kit design and the colors, and like it's a lot wilder, but it's also there's just a lot more things going on. Like, so as you see throughout the rest of the year, basically every 2 races they're going to be in something totally different. So going into year 2, I would say learning off of just the time that we needed and effort that needed to be put in was super cool, because the whole team was in the States after the was it after the Santa Cruz? I think it was after the Santa Cruz Christmas party, and they all came down here. So we spent like 2 days in a room where we were just like showing them designs. We were kind of going through with all the riders, kind of like what our strategy for the season was going to be from a kit perspective. And that was just like, those are things like you look around a room and you've got 4 of the best mountain bikers in the world, some of the best like product designers in the world. And I'm just like, what am I doing in here? Like, what's my role? But yeah, it's just to connect all of it. But it's been super cool how we've evolved that working relationship, and even from year 1 to year 2, it's really changed a lot. And now, not to take away from any of our other partners as well, because we do the same exact thing with FMD. Tony is, a visionary in his own right? So he comes to us with tons of good ideas. And Tahnée's super fun to work with as well, because we've got her. What's really fun about Tahnée actually is we do a signature collection with her, so that's sold in our main line. We do that every year. And so what's really fun with Tahnée is like working on the one-off like custom race stuff, but then how does that kind of like lean into the collection that we sell commercially? So that's been really fun, and like striking that balance between the two has been really cool. And she's super funny. She sends us like the craziest ideas, because she's super into like fashion and, more of like a cultural, I would say, side of things. And so to see like the design references that come through from her, sometimes I'm just like, where do you find this stuff? But our design team they love it. Like it just gives them something to run with. And so, yeah, that relationship has been awesome as well. But I think it's kind of how the program has developed and how we pull all the athletes in and to work with them directly. Like, even Nico, like we were talking about kits the other day. And it's just fun, man. It's like the stuff you dream about as a kid. So to get to do it as a job, I'm just like, I have to pinch myself sometimes. It's pretty rad.
It's a pretty awesome job. How much involvement then do the athletes get in the design? Does it vary from athlete to athlete? I guess with the TS57 stuff you do with Tahnée, there's more involvement, but
yeah, it all varies. It depends on the project. so like Syndicate, for example, this year we did all the like I guess you would say like the graphic design. So we had laid out a schedule, and we're like, okay, race 1, race 2, blah blah blah. This is the graphic for each, and then we gave them the opportunity to pick their own color combos. So then they were sending us like PD was sending us like Gulf cars and like old references from like the SE racing days, and Greg was like all over the place. It was his were the craziest. Jackson is sending us like Formula One cars and golf bags and just all the stuff that he's into. So it's really cool to see like how their personalities came out in it, and then like Nina, for example, like the other like the 3 racers and PD. Actually, PD was pretty easy, but the other 3, like, no offense to them, they kind of took forever. They're like so many ideas and like sending us like, especially Greg, like he was all over the map. But Nina was like, I want this blue, and I want this, and then I want like she was so German about it. It was awesome. Like, and then the way that it came to life too is just like so cool. Like her Val Nord kit this weekend, she pushed so hard for like a navy blue, and we're like. It's kind of boring. Like, are you sure? Like, that's what you want? And she was like, no. She was so committed to it. And now we see it come to life and we're like,
yeah, that's good. Yeah.
You were right. Yeah. So, but yeah, to answer your question, it depends on the project. How much, I would say Tony probably has the most influence on the FMD side of things.
Okay.
The crew over at the Union are just like, you guys, we trust you. Just Joe is like, I'm not even going to try and tell you, like, you guys just do your thing and you'll hit it out of the park. So, yeah, that's all. It's all different, but yeah, works, kind of according to each project. So,
yeah. But it's become a bit of an expectation now that like athletes have new kit either like every race or every other race. That obviously creates a lot of work for you guys. Like how do you actually go about getting it made? Because normally with this sort of stuff, there's like pretty high minimum order quantities. You can't just get like a few jerseys made. Like how does all this stuff get done?
We have a dedicated resource at our factories. So they're super like, obviously our athlete program is pretty massive. Like you think minimum quantities and it's like, we're going way beyond that. It's like different pricing structure, obviously, but yeah. So everything for our athlete program is produced all in the same place. So Supercross, Motocross, MXGP athletes, all the bike athletes, all across the board. So we've got an awesome development team here who we've got resources dedicated to both moto and bike programs. So we'll always have a developer in the meetings with us, just kind of tracking the whole process. And they're the ones that work directly with the vendors. We just kind of build out the plan, place the orders, sort the quantities and the sizes, and it works pretty smoothly. It's just we have a little not the shortest lead times, so we have to plan in advance. But that's we figured out a pretty good system at this point. And then beyond that, another like awesome resource that we have here is so we have an in-house we call it tech design. So they're the ones that basically do all the patterns for all of our product, right? So like your Flex Air pants that you ride in, like they're doing fittings for those and they're like dialing all that stuff in across the board. So we've got our team on that side. They are the unsung heroes of Fox. Like anybody that wears Fox product that loves how their pants fit or loves how their jersey fits, like thank the tech design team. And honestly, some of them even are riding these days. So it's super cool. But yeah, they work really closely with us. So anytime we have athletes in, we'll do like a full measurement session. Okay. And we actually track for an athlete, for example, like Jackson Goldstone, who's been with us for a super long time. We've tracked his sizes like since he has been with us. So it's really cool to see, especially someone who started when he was so young, to see like how they grow, and same with Ken Roxon. Like he's grown up, like he's big and so muscular now, and like so to be able to compare that data historically is really cool. But it also it helps us to really dial the fit in for everybody. So luckily our stuff is pretty damn good as it is. So it doesn't take a ton of adjustments to get it like perfect for them. But if we have any issues, you know, it's pretty easily solved.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah, it does always look pretty good. And the other thing you've done fairly recently is the World Champs kits. And you had like this continuous theme across all of the Fox athletes, but everyone was slightly different. Like, again, it's a huge piece of work. Like, how long does it take to put something like that together and get all the athletes bought in, get everyone what they need? Like, because it was head to toe, right? They had shoes, the works.
Yep. So, well, you know, the launch of our shoes this spring was a huge focus for us as a brand overall. You know, it was a 3-year development project. You know, so much time and energy went into the development of the actual like commercial shoe for when it came out. And man, I can't not thank the team enough for all the work that went into it, because those things it's for us on the sports marketing side, when we've got a product that's that good, that we are so confident in, that we get the size for the rider, we send it to them and they're just like stoked, like no adjustments needed, like everything dialed, and no bullshit. That's how it's been for every single athlete, like, which is awesome because it's not always the case. But I think it just really says a lot for the development that went into the product. So my point is, you know, the shoes were such a big focus for us. We really wanted to use the World Cup as a platform to show them off, you know. Yeah. So we've done a lot of custom stuff already, like the pink ones for FMD. We had a Syndicate collab shoe that actually was commercially released. Yeah. All the custom stuff for the athletes on the Syndicate, and then World Champs was kind of like, all right, we're gonna go big here. So every single one of our athletes who's on our shoes got a custom colorway specific to their country. So that was super cool, and that was a surprise. They actually didn't know about that. Okay. Normally for World Champs, we don't really show them the kit at all. We treat it as a full surprise because it's easy, right? We know, like, all right, Greg's South Africa, Tahnée's Great Britain, Jackson's Canada, so on and so forth. So we surprised them. And this year we did like that. I don't know if you noticed, but it was like a little section on the pant and the jersey where it said like their hometown, and it had their signature and the flag. So we really wanted to make it about home for them. Like, where are you from? What are your roots? And, you know, because, hey, being picked, I think like one thing that people kind of maybe forget the magnitude of, but being picked to represent your country at World Champs, that is such a huge deal. And we wanted to honor that. We wanted to honor, you know, where you came from and what your roots are. So, even like, I remember when Nico got his kit and it said like Reading, Pennsylvania, where he was born. Like, you know, I feel like people think Nico Mullally and they think North Carolina, but like, he's from Pennsylvania, which, you know, I think he was really proud to have that on his kit. And again, special moments, man, that you just, it's so cool to be a part of. And we're so proud as a brand to help create that stuff.
Yeah, super cool. Again, really nice to see. I had a good close-up look at Nico's kit, and so many nice little design touches and like the signatures and everything. Even on the shoes, there was something on the like bit that the boa runs through. There was like
on the webbing on the tongue.
Super good. Nice. Yeah, so where do you think we'll see race kit design progressing in the mountain bike world? Like both from kind of fit perspective, materials, design. There's obviously like the speeds aren't getting any slower. Aerodynamics becomes more important. Like riders are interested in how well their kit fits for sure. It looks like, you know, kits are getting tighter. Do you think we're going to see different materials being employed, and where do you see all that heading?
Exciting topic, right? Like, especially for someone like me. It's funny when you mention aerodynamics. What is it? Chris Kilmurray says that is it 1.7 seconds you get from tucking in your jersey? He's got a theory. I'm sure he's got some data.
To be had. It depends on the speed of the track for sure. But yeah, like tucking in your jersey, not having stuff flapping about, even having laces covered, like stuff like that makes a difference.
Totally. Yeah. And yeah, to answer your question, I think that's where it goes, right? Like, aerodynamics, you know, slimmer fitting, you know, more even materials that, like, because you think about it, it's like, you want breathability all the time, but breathability also means there's openness and there's air flowing through that can actually cause drag. So that's some stuff I think we'll see developing. I will not claim to be an engineer expert by any means. I say in meetings all the time, I'm just the dumb sports marketing guy. But I think the evolution is natural, and I think we're obviously starting to see it, because even if you look at photos from 10 years ago, it's far and away completely different, you know?
Yeah.
And I'll actually be interested what Jackie has to say when he rides in that Moto kit in Val Nord, but he'll probably be like, oh my God, I feel like I got a parachute on. But yeah, I mean, we're seeing it across the board, right? Like you watch the tour, like look at those kits, like it's literally painted on, and the aero technology, and so I think like everything for me like trickles down from there. So yeah, more wind tunnel testing, more aerodynamic focus, more form fitting, and yeah, I think it'll. I mean, we don't like start taking visors off helmets and that kind of stuff, because I think that's the wrong direction, because we still have to look cool. That's the point.
The balance.
Yeah, you got to look cool. So, but yeah, it'll be exciting where it's going. We have some stuff we're working on that, our engineering team would skin me alive if they heard me talking about it. So I'll leave it at that. But yeah, I think it'll be really fun to see where everybody starts to push it. And, there's a lot of, hey, we're not the only brand in the mix, right? There's other big players here, and a lot of technology at people's fingertips. So I think that'll be pretty interesting. But then on top of that, I think from a protection standpoint too, that'll be really interesting to see where it starts to go, because one, the injuries aren't getting any less, right? No. Like, unfortunately, we've seen even this year, right? Like with Omri going out, for example, and you're missing that's the worst. Like as a fan, you want the roster to be full at the start hut, and when riders miss racing because of injury, the protection companies need to figure out solutions to that. And of course, hey, injuries are going to always happen. It's unavoidable in our world. But at the same time, I think that's where we've got the most runway to improve. From a protection standpoint, and just keeping riders safer. And I can tell you right now, there's a whole group of people sitting behind the wall behind me here that's literally every day what they're working on is how to keep riders safer. So we're super proud of the work that we've been doing, but it's always there. There's always more to do, and you can always be better. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where it goes.
Yeah, that it will be for sure. I mean, you obviously know mountain bike really well. And I listened to a pretty amusing rant from Brendan Fairclough on the Ride Companion podcast, where he was comparing taking a woman that you're trying to impress to a Supercross race versus taking her to Fort William World Cup. And clearly Fort William didn't fare too well in this mix. Like, they were on a date at the burger bar getting bitten by midges versus being in hospitality at a Supercross race. But do you think mountain bike could learn a lot from Supercross? Because they're still like, at that level, very, very different, right?
Yeah, but I think also, too, to compare the worst case scenario for each is also pretty valid, because I was in Fort William getting bitten by midges, which I actually, like, that was my first time to Fort William this year, which I was, so stoked to finally make it there. I had no idea about those things. And I remember, like, our boys from the UK crew were there running the booth, and they're like, yeah, you need the spray. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And then I learned you really did need it. But yeah, point being though, it's like going to Unadilla National in New York on the moto side is no more pleasant than being at Fort William getting bitten by midges too. So I think Supercross for sure, right? Like, you're in a stadium, like normally you're in like an urban setting. So you're in, like, you stay at nice hotels, you eat at nice restaurants. It's like a nice experience. But then at the same time, it's like Leogang World Cup is like, I come home and I'm like, I want to move to Leogang. This is the best place in the world. Like, amazing hotels, amazing food, other than the weather we've had there the last couple of years. But yeah, so I think, can the sports learn from each other? Absolutely. But I think what it boils down to is, like, we have to stay core at the same time, because I think the moment that you've got like climate controlled VIP boxes and, that's not the direction that any of us want to see it go. So do we have work to do to improve the experience and to get more people there? Absolutely. But I think really that starts with the TV broadcast and how people watch it, because someone who doesn't know anything about the sport, they're not just going to rock up to an event. They need to see it on TV first, and they need to get pulled in and start to follow it. And then they come and experience it. You know what I mean? But if that experience from the media side on the TV broadcast is not 10 out of 10, the likelihood of getting them to come to a live event is got to be lower. So I think that's where it really starts, is that experience. And I would say, obviously there's been a lot of changes this year on especially the World Cup broadcast. I don't think it's negative by any means. It's different, but at the same time, like, I think that's where the focus needs to be for these promoters. Mm-hmm. Like, the live experience is important, but until that broadcast is like, the numbers are just exploding, I don't think we need to worry anything about like a better experience on site, because on site for me is pretty damn good in my opinion. So, and the nature of World Cup, especially World Cup downhill, is like, you get up on the hill, you take the lift, you spend 2 hours walking down as the riders are coming down. Like, that's part of the experience. And that can never go away, in my opinion. Because there is nothing like hearing a rider come through the forest and the just absolute mayhem that is being caused by the fans, whether they're clanking on old rims or they've got horns or bells, or, I mean, nothing gives me bigger goosebumps than that, because that's what we all do it for, right? Like, to hear the crowd go nuts like that and the riders feed off of it. It's just, there's no cooler environment in my opinion. So we gotta do our best to preserve that, because that's sacred.
Yeah, it's a pretty special place to be come race day for sure. How do you think we're well positioned then? Like, we've got this super exciting product, we've got a load of athletes that are looking pretty cool. Like, I think all the clothing brands are doing a good job of making everyone look good. And we've got one of the biggest broadcasting companies on the planet, I guess, now backing the sport with multiple millions of dollars. Do you think we're in a good space to kind of start getting that growth and bringing more people in?
I think the foundation is there for sure. You've got, like you said, now with Warner Brothers coming in and the ESO, and hey, hats off to that crew, because they took on an absolute monster. And hey, not everything is going to be perfect. It's going to take time. But I think the fact that they're trying and they're putting in the effort that they are, it's only going to get better. Yeah. And Chris and his whole team have been awesome with us. I love the like willingness that they have to listen to the riders, especially when it comes to like track markings and safety and all that stuff. I want to make sure, I hope it's implemented more. I know they're making the effort to listen, which is great. But yeah, foundationally though, I think we're set up super well. We've got really interesting athletes, amazing racing. I mean, holy shit. Like, yeah. I mean, I don't think there's been a tighter margin ever, right, at the top, and also too, like, the development of the women's side is, for me, is like one of the most exciting things. The junior women in Fort William, I was like, what is going on here? Like, this is so rad, Yeah. So I think that the talent, right, like, you've got that. I would say it's like Jackson's generation, right? Like, kids that are anywhere from 21 to 16 who grew up on the sport, grew up kind of doing a little bit of everything too. I think that's what's really interesting. You see these kids who, I mean, Jackson's the perfect example, right? It's like, he didn't know what he wanted to do. We thought he was going to be a slope guy or like riding Rampage. And maybe he does that one day, because he absolutely could. But I think the diversity of the talent we're seeing in the athletes coming up is going to only make for more exciting racing for years to come. I mean, yeah. I remember, like, I was talking to Jackson when he was obviously such a bummer he missed Fort Bill this year with everything he was dealing with all his medical stuff. And I was talking to him on the phone, and he was like, "Oh yeah, like I think I'm probably gonna miss Fort Bill." It was like right when it was all going down, and I told him, I was like, "Dude, how many world champs are you gonna race in your future?
Yeah.
Like, but think about that. Like, what's it gonna 10 years from now? Like, what's the racing gonna be like? You know, with talent of his level. And hey, there's more coming, man. He better keep sharpening his skills because." The kids are coming. It's going to be really, really damned interesting to see. But yeah, and to overall growth, I think I would like to see, you know, obviously you want to see like big mainstream money come into the sport, right?
Yeah.
Are we there yet? Yes and no. I mean, Mercedes, for example, like being involved previously, like that's huge. You know, we don't even see that in Moto. You have energy drinks, like they're the big ones, right? And energy drinks are obviously invested in mountain bike racing as well. But yeah, I mean, I think, you know, we start to see logistics companies coming in, airlines coming in, like things that all make sense in our world too. I think that would be super cool and would only expand the reach. And obviously the money coming into the sport helps everybody, right? Because if you're as an athlete, if your two biggest sponsors are your energy drink partner and your gear partner, on top of obviously your team sponsorship, like where else are they getting income from? Because the industry is only so big, right? Like endemic, I would say. So for the athletes to really elevate from an income point of view, you know, that's going to have to happen because you know, we're not tripling in size every year. You know what I mean? And the money coming in endemically is you know relatively staying the same. So yeah, I think that'll be the next sort of like massive progression is when we see bigger partners coming in. But obviously, there's the other side of that, right? Where it's like kind of going back to like my point around keeping things sacred, like. We as an industry need to make sure that we can, you know, have an influence on that and make sure that like this doesn't just get real goofy all of a sudden overnight, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that's what makes it cool. So to keep that foundation, like I talked about, you got to strike the balance. And I think, you know, we're in a good position to do that. I really feel that way. So
for sure. Are there things that you think need to change? Is there anything? And we've talked a bit about like pathway into the sport and so, well, not into the sport maybe, but into the professional level and the World Cup level of racing. Are there any other areas that you think need a bit of work for us to be kind of ready to go off in that direction and to bring in bigger brands and to get the growth really going?
Kind of put me on the spot there. The safety thing for sure. I think that's important from like that's kind of a different topic. I think you're leaning more towards like the business side of things. I think the ability for the venues to host the events in a strong way, like I love the fact that the ESO is combining, enduro now with the downhill events. But like, let's be honest, all the venues aren't going to work perfectly. You know what I mean? So I think that should be refined a little bit, just to because I think the idea, right, is like to elevate the overall magnitude of the events and create these festivals. You know, but in order to do that, I think that the venues really need to get sussed out a little bit better. And like for me, obviously I'm biased, but like I want to see more here in the US, you know. I think, you know, no disrespect to snowshoe whatsoever, but as a country, we could show a better experience, you know what I mean? When you think about like the amazing venues we go to in Europe between Leger, Morzine, Leogang, like these they're just set up so well. And then, I think like, you know, having something on the West Coast, like there's so many amazing ski resorts where, you know, some like everything could be hosted in a really good way. But I know, hey, that's not there's a lot of mechanics that go into selecting venues, and just like having the most epic place doesn't always mean they should have a World Cup. But I think that would be something that, you know, would help to just elevate overall foundationally, like I said.
For sure, yeah, something that will take a little while for the team to get around the world and visit all these places and find sites that are capable, I'm sure. But it feels like that's the direction they're wanting to head. And it's always amazing to see how many fans travel a really long way to get to Snowshoe and to support the sport. So can you imagine, like, if we had more rounds over there, like what the crowds would be like? It would be so good.
Oh yeah, totally. Like, and honestly, like the East Coast is so rad right now. Like, with, like I mentioned, Nico earlier and everything going on in the Southeast, like sort of like centered around Pisgah, but then the Northeast as well. We moved. We work really closely with Clay Harper and the U.S. Open, and we moved the U.S. Open back to the East Coast last year, for example, and had it at Killington in Vermont. And man, it was just so cool to see the community that came out, the young participation, like the youth classes, was so rad to see, like just the list of entries and the women's class and all the different things that were going on with that event, as like I said, kind of like as a festival too. So yeah, the communities are there. It's just like we just need to get the events to those spots, and I think it'll happen. I think I've heard enough rumblings that I think we're moving in the right direction. So, but I'll leave that to Chris and his team to put out press releases.
They're a busy bunch, but I'm sure we'll hear some more about next year's calendar soon. Well, for sure. We're going to start wrapping up pretty soon, but I asked a few people within the industry that have worked with you what I should talk to you about. And I'm just going to pick two of the questions that came up. Most of them I can't really ask you. The first one of those two, if you could sign anyone who's not currently a Fox athlete from the mountain bike world, who would you want to bring on board and why?
Kate Edwards.
Okay.
I don't think I need to say anything.
It's a no-brainer, right?
Yeah. No, I love Cade as personally, but like as a rider, yeah, he's just, every time, he was I can't remember what he was talking about. We were somewhere in Leogang, and I can't remember the story now, but he was all stressed because he didn't have like any footage in the can that nobody had seen, and he like needed to show. I can't remember why he needed to show somebody something, and I was like, dude, just send him your Instagram. Like every time you post something, it's just a total banger, So, yeah, I think as far as like a well-rounded bike rider goes, man, I am just such a fan of that kid, and yeah, he couldn't be a better human at the same time. So, yeah, would love to have him. I'd love to have him repping Fox at some point, but start a Vital thread. Maybe somebody will, some rumors will be starting to kick around.
Let's see if we can make it happen. Nice one. All right, the second one, I won't say who this came from, but the question is, who do you love more, the Syndicate or the Union?
Oh, that came from Joe. Oh, man. I have equal love for the whole team. Yeah, they're all, like I said, I was talking about it earlier, like the way we work with everybody is super rad. And I have been wearing I will say I did get gifted a couple pieces of Union teamwear that I've been repping around town here. So I've been representing the Union pretty well lately. But that's such a cool program, and they're super rad. So, but it's equal love for everybody.
Yeah, I like how you've got like two really different design languages between the Union and the Syndicate. Like still Fox, but two very different styles. Like the Union's kind of maybe a bit more like low key, some interesting color matches and stuff, and then more like factory vibe with the Syndicate. But it's cool that you've got those two different outlets.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's the ability for us to work with them the way that we do. They give us like so much freedom to have fun with it and just kind of, again, like you said, kind of create their own identities as teams. So yeah, it's working pretty good.
Nice. Well, we'll wrap up with our final four questions that we ask pretty much everybody. The first of those, if our listeners had £150, which is about $190 to spend to improve their performance on a bike, what would you recommend they go spend it on? It's not a lot of money.
Just one thing.
It doesn't have to be one thing. It could be a few things, but yeah, you've got a budget of $190.
I'm going to be super budget conscious. Okay. And I would tell them to go and get a set of the BergTech Greg Minar signature grips.
Yeah,
because
I've heard good things.
They are, and I work at Fox, but I do not wear gloves. I hate wearing gloves. And for me, like they've like changed my whole experience. And so it's funny. I joke with Dan that I've become like the BergTech, like the SoCal BergTech ambassador, because anybody who will listen to me, I'm like, you got to get these grips. So yeah, I would say the BergTech Manar signature grips, and then in classic Manar fashion, go and spend the rest of the money at the bar.
Okay. It's good. That doesn't go very far these days either, does it? Awesome.
The BergTech, the grips are like $23, I think. So you should be able to have a pretty decently good time. Just keep your crew tight.
Yeah, you can have a good post-ride session for sure. All right, next one. If you could wind back the clock and sit down with yourself, age 16, what advice would you give him?
Start riding mountain bikes.
Yeah, you feel like you missed something there? Well,
yeah, I think I could have. Again, like I said, living in Florida, we were just riding BMX bikes and building trails and stuff, but there was no reason why. I mean, there's stuff happening there now, especially, but I would have traded in my BMX for at least to like get a foundation going, because I was a late bloomer, but luckily my Moto and BMX foundational skill kind of helped me out.
What are you riding now? What's in the garage?
I've got a new Santa Cruz Nomad, which is, the new one. I got the butterscotch yellow.
Nice.
Yep, it's dreamy. That thing is. I took it to Leogang, rode it at the bike park. Like it's such a good rig. And then I've got I just framed I have an older Bronson. But I just framed it. Actually, literally finished framing it last night, because I'm gonna swap that. I'm gonna get a 5010. So okay. I'll have a balance between a 5010 and the Nomad. And then I've got an e-bike too. I've got a Bullet.
Why not? Eh?
Yeah,
they're good fun toys.
Oh, they are. Yeah, it's just to get more descents, man. That's what it is.
Yeah. Well, and dad life's coming your way soon, right? So limited time e-bikes are like the perfect tool.
It is, yeah. I've been looking at those like shotgun seats that you put on the top tube, put on the e-bike. Yeah, get the Grom out as soon as she can hold her head up.
Yeah, they are real good for that. Our little one absolutely loves it. Yeah, definitely recommend those for sure. All right, man. Third one. If you could have a coaching session from anyone, past or present, who would it be, and what would you want to learn from them? And
this is, just to be clear, this is coaching for riding.
You could have a riding and a non-riding if you want.
Okay. Riding, I would probably... I mean, I feel like this is like a really stereotypical answer, but I spend so much time with him, and he still blows my mind to this day that we get to talk and hang out. But Steve Pete, he is just such a legend. And honestly, I would say in both sides too, like for riding, but also just like life advice. The guy's so wise.
I've heard that from a few people, actually. I don't know Steve particularly, but I've heard a few people say that.
Yeah, I mean, he's had such an interesting career, and he lived over here in California for a while, and he's just done so much. He's been part of the sport for so long and seen so many things come and go, and I feel like he's able to like sniff stuff out super easily. He'll be like, "Oh, I'm not sure about this," and like he's normally right. So life coach on and off the bike, Steve Pete.
There you go. All right, last one. What do you do every day that you feel benefits you?
Actually, this is kind of a cool story. So, and I tell this to my crew all the time here. This is like pretty specific to my job. And I've actually, admittedly, I've been a little bit bad about it lately. So don't quote me on the everyday thing. But one thing that's really important to me, and because, hey, everybody's job gets like monotonous or stressful, or, there's challenges, and, something that I do that I really, try and keep the fire lit and make me realize that I'm so lucky to get to do what I do on a daily basis, is I try and walk in the front entrance of our building. And the front entrance of our building is like this. It looks like a Death Star, like, you know, super cool design. And we've got a retail store in the front with a bunch of bikes on display and a bunch of memorabilia. So for me to go and hey, there's like 7 different entrances, right? So like most people who work here like park in the back and walk in like a side door. But for me to walk in the main entrance is something that like it really helps to keep me grounded, but it helps to remind me, again, like I said, like how lucky I am to get to do what I do and to be a part of such a epic, you know, legendary brand. At our main entrance, like we have a retail store, and then it kind of opens into like the rest of the office. And something really cool that I believe it was Pete Fox did as part of the design is there's an entryway that's painted in like the zebra pattern, like the classic like fox animal print pattern. So from what I've heard, he wanted that to be like an entry point. Like you had to walk through that, and then it opens into the rest of the building, which is all future focused. Like there's not a ton of old stuff. So that just like kind of reminds me every day what I'm doing. And I'll do that in the morning because I came in the back door this today. So I'll do it again tomorrow.
Nice. I like that. That's cool, man. That's really cool. It sounds like an interesting building. I'll have to get out there and visit one day and see it in person.
You're always welcome, man. We got a pump track out back, and we got a full gym now, which is really cool.
No way.
We've got actually like a bunch of the local SoCal kids use, like even like Ryan Pinkerton. He trains with. We have a trainer that's here once a week that works with our staff. But then like Pinky comes and he works out in the gym, and a couple of our moto athletes, like, not that Pinky's not one of our athletes, but you know, he's a friend, and like we let him in here, and he's a good kid. And, but yeah, some of our moto athletes like Ryder DiFrancesco and Joe Shimoda's here like once a week, it seems like. So yeah, it's there's a lot going on. You'll have to come by, man. We'll give you a tour.
Space. Nice one, man. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting, finding out a bit more about you. I'm looking forward to seeing how things progress with all things Fox across the sport and how the sport itself moves on as well. And it's cool to have you involved. So yeah, if people want to find out a bit more, where should they be going to like check out the latest Fox kit? Yeah,
foxracing.com. Regardless of where you are in the world, it'll direct you to the country specific site. But honestly, the lifeblood of our sport is the bike shop. So go to your local bike shop, hang out there, go bring the boys a 6-pack of beer and get them to work on your bike. And I think that's, you know, culturally that's so important. Go and put your hands on some product and try some stuff on. And you know, dealers, website, we're pretty easy. Instagram, that's where everybody goes these days.
You've got a specific bike, haven't you? Is it at Fox MTB for bike?
Yeah, at Fox MTB, and then at Fox Racing is kind of like the Halo channel for the whole brand. So you'll see content around both sports on that channel, and a little bit more lifestyle driven. The main source is at Fox MTB, and we're that thing. It's crazy to see that the channel just exploding with interaction, and thanks to everybody who follows along. And if you're not following, definitely give us a follow because we're having some fun on there.
Good stuff, man. Well, yeah, like I say, it's been an absolute pleasure. All the best. I hope dad life early phases treat you well, and hopefully I'll see you at a race at some point when you come out the other side of it.
Yeah, awesome, man. Thanks so much for having me on, Chris. Appreciate it.
Pleasure. Cheers, man.